She was already screaming when I reached my seat. "That's my seat, move, now." Her finger was inches from my face, her voice loud enough to turn every head. I looked at the number, then at my boarding pass. "Same seat, window." She slapped a folded paper on the armrest and said, "I apprayed it. You people always lie." The flight attendant tried to speak, but Karen cut her off. "Call security. He's refusing orders." Phones came out. A man behind me whispered, "Here we go." I stayed calm and stepped back, because the look on Karen's face told me she wanted a scene, not a seat. She leaned closer and hissed, "I fly every week. I know how this works." Then she smirked and added, "If you don't move, you're not flying today." The attendant asked for both boarding passes. Karen waved hers like a badge and said, "He's trying to steal my seat." I handed mine over without a word. Karen laughed and said loud, "Enough for the cabin. Watch this. They always fold." What she didn't know was the small black pin on my jacket wasn't decoration, and the phone in my pocket had already started recording. Someone across the aisle muttered, "Man, this is about to get ugly." I looked at the window, then back at her, and said softly, "Ma'am, you might want to sit down." She rolled her eyes and waved her hand like she owned the plane. "Sit where you belong," she snapped. The flight attendant checked the screen again and said calmly, "Sir's ticket shows this seat." Karen's smile dropped for half a second. Then she leaned in and whispered, "I know the captain." Loud again, she said, "This man is making me feel unsafe." That word changed everything. 2 passengers gasped. A guy across the aisle started recording. Karen pressed the call button again and said, "I want him removed." The attendant hesitated, then asked me to step into the aisle just for a moment. That moment felt heavy. Karen smirked and slid into the seat like she'd already won. As I stood there, she said loudly, "Some people should learn their place." A kid a few rows back asked his mom why the man was in trouble. The mom didn't answer. Airport security boarded before the doors closed. Karen pointed at me without looking at them. "That's him. He tried to force me out of my seat." One guard asked for my ID. I handed it over. Karen crossed her arms and said, "I warned him." The guard looked at the ID, then at me, then back at Karen. "Sir, did you raise your voice or touch her?" I said, "No." Karen laughed. "Of course he did. They always deny." Then she added something that made my jaw tighten. "Check his bags. People like him hide things." The cabin went silent. The guard paused, then said, "Sir, we need you to step off the plane." As I walked toward the door, Karen leaned back and said, almost sweetly, "Enjoy your layover." I stopped, turned just a little, and said, "You sure you want this on record?" She blinked. "Just once." She laughed it off. "I have nothing to hide," she said, loud and proud. The guard motioned me forward again, but this time the flight attendant spoke up. "Sir mentioned a recording." Karen snapped her head around. "Recording what?" I pulled my phone out slowly. "Everything since you touched my seat." Her face stiffened. "That's illegal," she said fast. "Delete it." The guard asked to see it. I played the clip. Her voice filled the cabin. Clear, sharp, calling for my removal before anyone even checked the seat number. A few people shook their heads. Someone whispered, "Wow." Karen jumped up. "He edited that. You can do that now." The guard didn't reply. He just asked for her boarding pass again. She handed it over, annoyed. He checked the screen, then frowned. "Ma'am, this is one for B." Silence hit hard. She was sitting in one for A. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "They change seats all the time," she said. I was upbraided. The attendant checked again. "No upgrade listed." Karen's voice rose. "Are you calling me a liar?" The guard looked at her and said, "I'm asking you to move." She refused. Crossed her arms. "I'm not moving anywhere." That's when the captain's voice came over the speaker. "Security, please update." Karen smiled again, sure she still had control. The guard pressed his radio and said, "Captain, passenger falsely reported a threat." Karen's smile cracked. Just then, a man to row's back spoke up. I saw the whole thing. She never let him sit. Another voice joined. Then another. Karen looked around and realized the cabin was no longer on her side. She sat down slowly, but it was already to the captain stepped out of the cockpit. Not angry. Calm. That kind of calm that makes people nervous. He looked at Karen first. "Ma'am, please stand up." She smiled tight and said, "Finally, tell him to leave." The captain didn't even look at me. He asked the guard, "Is this the passenger who made the safety claim?" The guard nodded. Karen jumped in. Yes, and I feel threatened. The captain held up a hand. We reviewed the seat log and the cabin audio. Her eyes widened. Audio. He turned to her and said slowly, you lied about your seat. You made a false safety report. That delays this flight. A few people clapped before stopping themselves. Karen's face went red. This is ridiculous, she snapped. I want your badge number. The captain didn't raise his voice. You're leaving this aircraft. She laughed, sharp and loud. You can't remove me. I have status. The guard stepped closer. Ma'am, stand up now. She grabbed the armrest. Touch me and I'll sue all of you. The captain finally looked at me. Sir, thank you for staying calm. Then he added something that changed the air. Especially after your service. Karen froze. Service? She asked. Till late. The captain continued. Active reserve. Correct. I nodded. Whispers spread fast. Karen stood up on her own this time. That's not relevant, she said. The guard said, it is when you accuse him of being a threat. As they walked her toward the door, she turned and yelled, this isn't over. The captain looked back at the cabin and said, it is for today. The door closed behind her. The plane stayed silent for a second. Then someone said, sir, you can have my seat if you want. I finally sat down in my window, same seat, and my phone was still as I buckled in. The attendant leaned close and whispered, thank you for your patience. I nodded. But my chest was still tight. The plane hadn't moved yet. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. People started checking watches. A man across the aisle said, why are we still here? The intercom clicked. The captain's voice came back, slower this time. Ladies and gentlemen, we are delayed due to an incident at the gate. A soft groan filled the cabin. I looked out the window and saw Karen again, standing with airport police now. She was pointing back at the plane, waving her arms, still talking, still fighting. The flight attendant came to my row again and asked, sir, can you confirm something? I said, sure. She lowered her voice. She's claiming you threatened her after deplaning. I almost laughed. Almost. I never left my seat, I said. She nodded. We know. Then she added, the camera's due too. A few rows back, someone muttered, she's digging deeper. The delay screen changed again. Karen was now pacing, phone to her ear, shaking her head like the world betrayed her. One of the guards spoke into a radio, then pointed at her bag. She protested, loud, even through the glass, we could see it. A kid near the window asked, Dad, why is that lady still mad? To Dad reply, because she can't stop. The captain's voice came back one last time. We appreciate your patience. The situation is being handled. I looked down at my phone. New message. Unknown number. It read, sir, this is airport security. Please save that video. I locked the screen and looked straight ahead. Karen thought the flight delay was her last move. She didn't know the real trouble had just the plane finally pushed back, but my phone kept buzzing. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth was already moving faster than the aircraft. Halfway down the runway, the attendant came again. This time with a serious face. Sir, when we land, security will meet you. A man nearby looked worried from me. I gave a small smile. That's fine. We landed smooth, but the cabin felt heavy. When the door opened, 2 airport officers waited, and a third man in a dark jacket behind them. Karen wasn't there. One officer asked me to step aside. The dark jacket man spoke first. I'm with Federal Aviation Compliance. That caught attention. He continued. The woman you dealt with has a record. I raised an eyebrow. He false reports. Fake upgrades. Intimidation. He paused, then said, this time she picked the wrong person. He showed me a tablet. On it was Karen's video, from my phone, sensed with cabin cameras, clear, every word, every lie. She claimed you threatened to crash the flight, he added. A few passengers behind me gasped. The officer said, that's a felony. I felt the room go quiet again. Then the man asked me something unexpected. Do you want to press charges? I thought about her face. The screaming, the hate, the kid watching. I said, I just want the truth on record. He nodded. It is. As I walked out, I saw Karen on the other side of the glass now, sitting, hands shaking, no phone, no power. She looked up and saw me. For the first time, she didn't speak. She just realized something. She never lost a seat. She kept staring as I walked past. Like it she looked long enough. The ending would change. It didn't. I didn't look back again. Outside the gate, the nose came back slowly. Wheels, announcements, people rushing. The officer with me said, Sir, one more thing. He handed me a small card. If anyone contacts you, call this number. I nodded and put it in my wallet. I thought it was done. I was wrong. An hour later, my phone rang. Same unknown number. This time I answer. A calm female voice said, This is airport security follow-up. We need to ask you a few questions. It won't take long. I said okay. She asked me to sit. We talked. Simple things, timeline, words used. I told her exactly what happened. No drama, no extra. She stopped me once and said, You stayed very controlled. I shrugged. I've been trained too. She looked up. That's what I wanted to ask about. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She smiled slightly and said, Understood. As I stood up to leave, I heard shouting again. That same sharp voice, Karen's voice. She was arguing with two officers near a desk. You can't keep me here. I missed my flight, one officer said. Ma'am, you caused the delay. She pointed at me across the hall. There. That's him. He's the reason. Every head turned. People stared. Phones came out again. She stormed toward me until an officer stepped between us. Ma'am, stop, she laughed. Wild now. Oh please. You're all protecting him. She leaned around the officer and looked at me. You think you won? I didn't answer. That silence made her angrier than words ever could. Say something, she snapped. I looked at her finally and said, You're still recording yourself. She froze. Looked around. 3 cameras. 4 phones. Her mouth opened. Then closed. She stepped back. One of the officers said, Ma'am, we need you to calm down. She didn't. She pointed at my chest. Check him. Check his bag. He's lying about who he is. That did it. The female officer from before stepped forward. Ma'am, we already did. Karen laughed again. And? The officer replied. Everything he said checked out. Karen's eyes darted. That doesn't mean anything. The officer leaned in slightly. It means your statement doesn't. They escorted her away again. This time quieter. No shouting. Just heavy steps. I left the terminal and thought it was finally over. I went to the hotel, dropped my bag, and sat on the bed. My hands started shaking then. Not fear. Release. I stared at the wall for a long time. The next morning, my phone exploded. Messages, missed calls. A friend sent a link. Is this you? I opened it. There it was. A short clip, my clip. Karen screaming. The title read, Passenger lies, veteran removed. Then truth comes out. Millions of views. Comments flying. Some angry, some supportive, some ugly, some kind. I didn't read long. I turned the phone face down. At breakfast, a man approached me slowly. Excuse me. Were you on that flight? I nodded. He held out his hand. Thank you for staying calm. My kid was watching. I shook his hand. Another woman nodded from her table. You handled that with class. I smiled once. Small. By noon, another call came. This one official. Sir, this is legal services for the airline. I listened. They apologized. They said Karen filed a complaint against everyone, including me. I almost laughed. Almost. The man continued. However, after review, she is banned from flying with us. He paused. And we are supporting charges related to false reporting. I said, okay. He hesitated. She's claiming discrimination. There it was. I closed my eyes for a second. I expected that, he said. We have footage. I replied. Then you have the truth. Silence. Yes, he said quietly. We do. That evening, I saw her again. Online. Mugshot-style photo. Messy hair. No smile. Headline. Passenger arrested. After false safety threat causes flight delay. It didn't mention me by name. Just another passenger. That was fine. Days later, a letter arrived at my house. From a lawyer. Her lawyer. Threats, claims, demands. I read it once and put it down. I called the number on the card the officer gave me. The man on the other end sighed like he'd been waiting. Yeah, he said. We got that too. I asked, so what now? He replied, now she keeps talking. I smiled for the first time in days. Weeks passed. The story grew, then faded. Another outrage replaced it. I went back to my routine. Work, family, quiet life. One afternoon, my wife asked, does it bother you? I thought for a moment. What? She said. That she tried to destroy you over a seat. I looked out the window. It bothers me that she thought she could. My wife nodded. She understood. Then the court date came. I didn't want to go. I was asked to anyway. When I walked in, Karen was there. Smaller somehow. Quieter. She didn't look at me. Her lawyer whispered fast. The judge listened, calm, bored almost. The footage played, again. In that room, her voice sounded worse, meaner. The judge stopped it halfway. I've seen enough. Karen finally looked up. Your Honor. He raised a hand. You lie. Repeatedly. She tried again. He intimidated me. The judge looked at me. Did you speak to her before she screamed? I said, no. He nodded. That matches the record. The ruling was fast, fine. Probation. Mandatory counseling. Travel restrictions. When it was over, Karen walked past me. She stopped. For a second, I thought she might explode again. Instead, she said quietly, you didn't have to do this. I looked at her. Tired, neither. Did you? She walked away. Outside, the air felt lighter. I sat in my car and laughed once. Not happy, just relieved. A message popped up on my phone from an unknown number. Sir, this is the flight attendant from that day. I just wanted to say, thank you. I typed back, you did your job. She replied, so did you. Months later, I flew again. Same airline, different seat, same calm. As I boarded, a man looked at me and said, hey, weren't you? I smiled gently. No. I said, and took my seat. The plane lifted off, smooth and quiet. The city dropped away, lights turning into lines, then nothing. I rested my head back and closed my eyes. For the first time since that day, my chest felt normal again. A few minutes later, the attendant stopped by and placed a small note on my tray. No words, just a simple thank you written by hand. I folded it and put it in my pocket. Some things don't need to be said out loud. Across the aisle, a young boy kept looking at me. Finally, he asked, Mister, were you scared that day? His mom looked embarrassed and pulled him back, but I smiled. Yeah. I said, a little. He thought for a second. You didn't look scared. I shrugged. Sometimes being brave just means staying quiet. He nodded like that made sense. As the plane leveled out, I stared out the window again. Clouds below, open sky ahead. I thought about how fast power disappears when it's built on lies. How loud people feel strong until truth walks in without shouting. My phone buzzed once. A message from my wife. Landed yet? Almost. I typed. Proud of you. She replied. I looked around the cabin. People reading, sleeping, living their lives. Nobody staring. Nobody recording. Just normal. That's all I ever wanted. The captain's voice came on, calm and steady. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to cruising altitude. I smiled at that word. Welcome. Not because it was said, but because I finally felt it. Karen wanted control. She wanted to win. She wanted to decide who belonged. But seats can be taken back, power can be exposed. And truth doesn't need to scream. I didn't fight for attention. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move from my place. And in the end, that was enough.